Why feeling in control doesn't mean you are. A woman sits in a psychology lab at the University of Texas in 2008. She writes about a moment when she had no control over what happened. After that, a researcher turns on a screen. Grainy images appear, static, like snow on an old TV. She starts circling things, faces, objects, shapes that aren't there. This scene comes from Whitson and Galinsky's 2008 study on compensatory control. They were testing what people do when control disappears. Participants were split into two groups. One group wrote about a time they successfully controlled an outcome. The other wrote about a time they had no control at all. Then both groups saw the same images, same static, same noise. The difference wasn't on the screen. It was in what people saw. The low control group marked patterns everywhere. The high control group mostly saw grain. Your brain normally keeps a simple map of cause and effect. Effort leads to outcome. Action changes results. When that map breaks, when effort stops mattering, the brain doesn't accept randomness quietly. It compensates. It looks for structure, even if it has to invent it. Seligman and Meyer found the opposite reaction back in 1967. They were studying classical conditioning in dogs. The dogs received mild electric shocks. No matter what they did, they couldn't escape. Later, the researchers opened an easy escape route. The dogs didn't move. They had learned something simple. Effort didn't matter. So the brain shut effort down. That pattern became known as learned helplessness. Energy gets conserved when action stops paying off. Now look back at the woman in the 2008 lab. She didn't shut down. She leaned in. Instead of freezing, she saw meaning, conspiracy, connection, hidden order in random dots. Two responses to the same loss of control. One response, stop acting. The other, find control somewhere else, even if it's fake. Most people don't notice which one they're using. You check your phone during a meeting, not because it's urgent, but because replying feels like progress. The company's strategy keeps shifting. The org chart changes again. You can't control that, but you can control your inbox count. That's not laziness. That's your brain switching to a smaller game. It can still win. The same thing happens when a friend moves away without warning. You can't change their decision, so you reorganize your closet, plan next month's meals, lock in routines that feel solid. Your to-do list fills up, not with what matters most, but with what feels controllable. Back in the lab, Whitson and Galinsky ran a follow-up. They gave the low-control group a new task. This time, they looked at financial data. The same people who saw faces and static now saw trends in stock charts. Correlations the researchers planted, patterns that predicted nothing. The control group mostly ignored them. Loss of control doesn't just change how you feel. It changes what you see. You're not choosing to spot patterns. Your visual system flags them before you decide anything. Roche and colleagues studied this from another angle in 2003 and 2007. They followed people whose major goals became impossible. Illness, blocked careers, relationships that ended. Those who disengaged from the unreachable goal had lower cortisol and fewer depressive symptoms a year later. Those who kept mentally fighting it didn't. Disengagement isn't giving up. It's the brain stopping one failed search for control and reallocating attention. But people are bad at it. The woman in the lab walked out holding a printout of static. Circles carefully drawn around shapes she was sure were real. The researcher didn't correct her. She never asked. Most people don't get a lab explanation when control disappears. You just feel it. The tension, the itch to fix something. You check, organize, refresh. Your calendar fills with tasks that don't matter, because finishing them feels better than staring at what you can't change. A company announces layoffs. You can't control the list, but you can show up early, reply faster, volunteer more. That effort might help. or it might not. Your brain doesn't care. It wants the feeling of influence. 3 months later, your name is on the list. Or it isn't. The effort didn't decide it. Here's the part Whitson and Galinsky didn't emphasize in the abstract. The participants who saw the most patterns left the lab feeling better than the control group. Seeing structure, even fake structure, reduced anxiety in the moment. Finding meaning in randomness isn't always harmful. Sometimes it's cheaper than sitting with uncertainty. The cost shows up later. When invented patterns fail to predict reality, you either invent new ones or stop trusting perception altogether. The woman from the lab never learned her circles were wrong. She may still believe she saw something real that day. The script your brain runs when control disappears isn't optional. You can't talk yourself out of it mid-loop, but you can notice which substitute game you're playing. Email, routines, news refreshes. None of them predict what happens next. They don't decide whether your friend stays, whether the company survives, whether the path reopens. You're not controlling outcomes. You're controlling the feeling of control. That difference matters when uncertainty lasts. If you spend 6 months perfecting something small while the larger thing collapses, you didn't prepare. You medicated. Whitson and Galinsky's participants left the lab. The static stayed static. The patterns they circled never meant anything. How do you think you could ever know whether the control you're feeling is real or just your brain drawing circles around noise?